Hi, I'm Margie Schaller, host of the Sober Life Rocks podcast, and I want to welcome you as we talk this time about dry January. So, for those of you who don't know, let me tell you a little bit about it. Um, Dry January is a month-long challenge where people choose to abstain from alcohol for the entire month. It was actually started in 2013 by the nonprofit Alcohol Change UK and has now become a global movement, encouraging people to reset their relationship with alcohol. I mean, after the holiday season, right, we've had all the parties and all the indulgences. And so the idea is to give both your body and your mind a break from drinking and really just giving you an opportunity to think about how alcohol might affect different areas of your life, from sleep and energy levels to just your mental clarity and your mood. Now, I've talked to people who have said even just a month without alcohol can lead to noticeable benefits. I mean, they feel their health improve, or they're more productive, or just more aware of their own selves. Now, for some people, dry January, it's just a temporary reset. But for others, it serves as a springboard for a longer commitment to mindful or reduced drinking. So, whether you ultimately return to drinking or continue on your sober journey, try January. It's a valuable time to think about um, what is your relationship with alcohol, and is it serving you the way that you might have not thought about before?
Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. Whether you've never been a drinker, are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you, and you are not alone. In today's world, networking, socializing, and celebrations often happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. Through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you, who choose not to drink or drink less, can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice.
Now, I've brought on a special guest today to talk about what happens when we stop drinking. Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy is a happiness and transformational mindset coach. After 23 years in clinical orthodontics, she is now the host of the Business of Happiness podcast. And she's an author, a keynote speaker, and a rapid transformational therapist. She guides her clients to a deeper sense of self-confidence and self-trust so that they can take a quantum leap in their impact, their happiness, and their success. Tarryn, welcome.
Thank you so
good to have
much.
You here.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Margie.
Absolutely. So one of the things I kind of wanted just to dive into was, like, if people are taking on dry January, can you talk at all about what happens to your nervous system when alcohol isn't in the picture?
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me here. And
Absolutely.
As a woman who is 7 years sober now herself,
Amazing.
I know, such an incredible journey. I definitely can speak to the experience of what happened for me with my body, but I'm also going to answer this question from a scientific perspective.
Perfect.
Let's just talk about for a moment what it does biologically when we stop drinking. So one of the things that we know about alcohol is it has an immediate dopamine push. So that's why it feels good, right? We get that high, we call it a high from alcohol, and different types of alcohol give different highs. So things like vodka, the alcohols that are distilled will cause a faster dopamine increase than, let's say, beer, right? Which has a slower rise of dopamine. But extended periods of time of drinking creates more dopamine receptors in our brain. So we keep increasing the dopamine push, so our brain creates more and more receptors. So when we stop drinking alcohol, the first thing that our body experiences is less filling of those dopamine receptors, and we feel worse. So the immediate subsequent feelings after stopping drinking is a little bit of depression, a little bit of not feeling so happy. Over time, your body regulates itself, which is the most beautiful thing, because when you stop drinking, your brain starts to heal. The other thing that happens is you start to recalibrate serotonin. And serotonin, dopamine is that hit of happiness, that feel-good chemical immediately, but serotonin is the long-term feel-good chemical. And what we know about alcohol is it actually depresses long-term serotonin release. So over time, as your body's healing, as your brain is healing, you get more and more of the feel-good, the kind of deeper value structure. Yeah, deeper contentment over time. It's not so much of that happiness hit. It's more of a long-term satiation, a long-term stability and happiness. Kind of, I like the word contentment a lot. I like that word very much when it comes to serotonin. So those are kind of what's happening in your brain. Your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, is experiencing something else altogether. What alcohol has done has been a mask for teaching your body how to bring itself back down to calm. So for your listeners who are not familiar, there's two parts of your autonomic nervous system. There's the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, that intensity that we live in perpetually in our society. And then there's the parasympathetic nervous system, calm, rest and digest. And when we're talking about alcohol, what alcohol helps with is to bring us down when we're in a lot of the high stress fight or flight behavior.
Right. Everybody's always like, oh, I need a drink to calm down.
So at the end of the day, if you've been running at 100 miles an hour, meeting after meeting, patience all day, you haven't given yourself a chance to rest. Many of us, and I'm raising my hand here, resort to alcohol because we don't know how to bring ourselves down off of that intense stress. So it serves us a certain purpose. When we stop drinking, we don't have that artificial support on coming back down to calm. So now what we sometimes experience is an inability to sleep, an inability to relax at the end of the day, an inability to literally slow down, calm down, and stop.
I remember feeling like I was crawling out of my skin, like I didn't know how to sit still. And a friend of mine sent me off to Michael's to go get the little paint by numbers.
Oh,
just to learn to sort of sit still and focus on something that was, quite frankly, very meditative.
That's a brilliant idea. Oh my gosh, I love that, Margie. That's such a great suggestion. Just recognizing that my body needs calming is the beginning of healing. Because the truth is that over all the years of drinking, you're not aware of what your body needs.
Right.
You're not
and so
aware.
For somebody who's taking on Dry January, whether it's meant to just be a month of just calming themselves down, or whether it's from the amount of alcohol, or whether it's the beginning of the beginning, who knows? I think there's some practical suggestions like that of like, if we know we're going to feel a little down and depressed from your dopamine receptors, and we know we're going to feel fidgety because we don't know how to calm down. Like, what are some things that you could think of that people can do to navigate through something that's supposed to feel positive and maybe doesn't at first?
Yes. Oh, what a great question. One of my favorite suggestions is actually threefold, and you can do them all at once. Move your body, get outside, and breathe. And all three of those things are enormously healing for your nervous system and supporting your brain and dopamine release and serotonin release. So when we're moving our bodies, we're actually using both sides of our bodies. That's why exercise feels so good. That's why yoga feels so good. That's why dancing feels so good. And when you're using both sides of your body, you're actually asking your brain to speak across the corpus callosum. Why does that matter? Because Addiction lives in a single hemisphere. So that addictive process, when we're first trying to get off of be it an addiction to a drug or alcohol, or even just an addictive behavioral pattern, addiction to sugar. Anytime you're noticing yourself getting that craving or that intense need for something, moving both sides of your body, even taking a cup and moving it from one side to the other, asks your brain to be speaking across the corpus callosum. So when we're moving our bodies and walking with our arms and moving, we're actually encouraging that break in that addictive pattern. The other thing that getting outside does is it allows your body to gain what I call vista vision. So when we have our eyes gazing in a further distance, far away from us, we actually turn on parasympathetic nervous system calm. So interestingly, when you look at something up close, like teeth, if you're a dentist, or your cell phone, you're actually stimulating sympathetic nervous system stress. But when we look at something far away, imagine for a moment the last time you were at the beach or on a mountaintop. You're so calm. That's your vista vision. That's your parasympathetic nervous system turning on. And if you just notice what I did, that breath, standing on top of the mountain, that's also your parasympathetic nervous system turning on, because your vagus nerve, which is the queen of your parasympathetic nervous system, actually innervates the base of your lungs. So we get to use our bodies and the brilliance of our bodies to help our bodies come back to calm naturally and not artificially with alcohol. So that's my favorite suggestion. When you're feeling like you're going to crawl the walls, getting outside, moving your body, and then breathing. And I know we all have this experience. You just gain new perspective. Yeah. You remember why you're doing this dry January. You remember what it is, the promise you made to yourself or the commitment you made to yourself. And it puts everything back into perspective and pulls you out of that frantic, nervous, anxious place that we can sometimes get to when we're stopping an old addictive pattern.
That's so beautiful. So I know it's different for everybody, but from a nervous system point of view, I mean, how long do you think it takes just to sort of get out of that overwhelm that we feel at first?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And that's what we all want to know, right? How long is this going to last, right? And what is true is it is truly different for every person. And asking ourselves, how long is this going to last? I'm going to invite you to really ask a different question. Is how much can I love myself through this? Because what you're really looking for is to be seen, to be loved and comforted, and to be reminded that you're safe. Anytime we're experiencing fear, especially when something's happening in our bodies and we don't understand, we're just feeling anxious or feeling scared. What we're really experiencing is fear. And if you imagine, it's like anybody who's just looking for some comfort, and often alcohol served that artificial comfort. You get to now be that comfort for yourself, which is such a beautiful, beautiful thing to know and to realize that we get to be that for ourselves, but only if we have the awareness. So when you have that awareness, that's the superpower. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling so anxious right now. How long is this going to last? You get to just take a step back and remind yourself, I'm here. I am safe. It's okay to feel anxious right now, but I've got you. Almost reminding yourself that you are the steward of this body and you get to take care of her. And how good it feels to know that there is this beautiful being that is going to promise to take care of this beautiful body and not to leave it up to the hands of a chemical or somebody else. We actually get to take care of ourselves. And what I love about that is that nobody knows how you feel better than you do. You get to witness yourself and be that loving parent to yourself. So instead of asking, how long is this going to last? When you hear yourself ask that question, I invite you to just consider, how can I love myself through this right now? And remember that nothing is permanent. Nothing. Everything is fleeting. Even this moment, everything is temporary. And although that can be so painful sometimes, it can also be so beautiful to remember. Yeah.
I love that. And one of the things I'm just going to share from my own experience, I was a pretty steady drinker from the time that I was a teenager. And so when I got sober in my late 30s, like I didn't have a self to love myself with. And the beautiful construct, I ended up getting sober in AA. The beautiful construct in AA that they talk to you about is we're here to love you until you can love yourself.
Oh.
Now, AA may not be for everybody, but here's what I want to say. I got sober 19 years ago, and there was a whole lot of stigma around getting sober. And as I shared in the beginning, dry January wasn't even a thing back then. Today, if you choose to take on dry January, it is something that I think universally people are like, oh my God, that's so cool. And so if loving yourself seems like a bridge too far, this is a time that you can share it with others. That you can get that positive reinforcement and allow others to love you till you can love yourself. And honestly, that's one of the reasons we started Sober Life Rocks in the first place, was because for people who are sort of secretly sober in their work lives, like we want to be a community that can love each other until we can get to that place.
Yeah, so, community is the medicine always.
Yeah.
Community is the medicine. And one of the things that we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast is all these beautiful hormones that are released, dopamine and serotonin. Well, there's an incredible release of something called oxytocin when we're in community. And oxytocin is the same chemical that's released when you're nursing. It's the chemical that's released when we're in communities like Taylor Swift concert or a girls' weekend on the beach, and
or a football game, right?
Or football game, or any of those environments of community and that shared love and support. And yes, 100%. Sometimes we lean into community for that sense of love when we haven't yet learned how to love ourselves. And you bring to mind a really big component of choosing a sober journey or a variation of sobriety, and that is the shame that we carry around with ourselves. And often that doesn't feel very loving. And that's when we can really support ourselves in community again, because when we share our shame, it takes a little bit of the sting out of it. Because the truth is, none of us are alone. None of us are ever alone. Going through a sober journey can feel very isolating, can feel very lonely. And I want to honor that, because there's so much, social acceptance of drinking and community around alcohol, that when that has been your community, it can feel very lonely when you're not engaging in those same behaviors with that old group of friends. But remembering that you're never alone, and we get to actually find new community and really lean on that community, because it is the medicine, especially when we're going through something difficult, and we get to share our experience, which is why I love the work that you're doing here on Sober Life Rocks, because once we hear someone else's story, we see a little mirroring of our own. And we realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah. And that shame piece of it, to me, I had so much, but it was about my past.
Yes.
And one of the things that I still today struggle with that can often be a little triggering is the self-judgment of today. And thinking about, a dry January, does that mean that everybody does it perfectly? No.
Mm-mm.
We might be in a situation where all of a sudden we're like, I can't. I'm just going to have a drink today, and then we decide to keep going tomorrow or not. So how can we manage this self-judgment aspect as we're exploring a sober journey?
One of the best ways to approach self-judgment, the first superpower is the awareness of it, because sometimes we're not even aware when we're in self-judgment. So just the fact that you're recognizing it, that's great. That's so great, because think of how many times in the past, I know this from my experience and the clients I work with, we bypass that and we choose to bypass that emotion with alcohol. I don't want to feel this shame right now. I don't want to feel this right now. So let me drink it away and hide it. Yeah. So recognize that when you're first starting on a sober journey, those uncomfortable feelings are going to come up so much more.
There's emotions everywhere.
They're so loud. They're so loud. And especially if you haven't felt them in decades,
right?
They can feel huge. So what I like to remind clients of is bravo for recognizing that you're having an emotion, that really, and bravo for holding space for yourself. And then I'm going to bring this magic L word again, which is love. And I know sometimes it's hard to love ourselves, but if you can imagine pouring love on the emotion. So just sometimes loving yourself, especially when there's self-judgment around the way that you've behaved in the past, around choices you've made in the past, around people you've impacted in the past, all of those are very, very understandable emotions. Instead of thinking about pouring love on yourself, can you pour love on that part of you that is feeling the shame? Almost imagining it's a part of you like a little girl inside of you who's feeling so shameful. And if we allow that little girl to kind of come up and sit on our lap and just love her, I understand why you're feeling so ashamed. I get it. I love you through this. Anytime we can bring that outside of us and recognize that it's not who we are, it's just an experience of an emotion. It's just a very temporary experience. It's not truly our identity. And I know our mind wants to tell us that. That's who I am. That is who I am. It's actually not who we are. It's actually just what you're experiencing. So anytime we can take that and bring it outside of ourselves, almost imagining that emotion is literally like you can hold it in your hands and then pour love on it from there, from that perspective, and allow it to soften. This is definitely deeper work that I do with my clients, but really that's the component of it, is recognizing that it's just a component of who they are. It's not their identity. So
just going to be super real with you.
Yes.
I've done so much inner child work and I love that. And it has been the pathway to healing for me. But a lot of the language that you just used was very feminine. So maybe can you give us that same answer for how do we deal with that self-judgment, that shame, but now maybe from a masculine energy point of view?
So when I think about masculine energy, I think about action, right? What can I do? So when we think about action, we can write. So instead of visualizing or imagining loving a child or an emotion or pouring love on them, we can take pen to paper and write down the emotions I'm feeling are. And then just start listing all the emotions you're feeling. Very often, especially when we're coming through a sober journey, and we haven't allowed ourselves to feel multiple feelings, we really just know happy, sad, maybe angry. Right. And really, those are the kind of the real emotions it's one of those three at any point in the day. But journal for yourself I am angry. And what are the other emotions that we're feeling? Here's an easy tool for any of your listeners who are having trouble with emotions, because that's generally a feminine thing as well, is there's actually something called an emotion wheel. You can Google it. It's free. You can find the emotion wheel. And when you look at the emotion wheel, it actually has all kinds of emotions listed on it that you might not even consider. You might not even have thought of. But when you recognize I'm angry, look at the emotion wheel and see what other emotions might be there. Well, I feel betrayed. I feel afraid. I feel abandoned, and then allow yourself on a piece of paper in this action sense to write down the emotions on the piece of paper. And what you're doing is you're actually doing the same work. You're taking that emotion outside of you and you're putting it on paper. And now you can look at it from a new perspective outside of you and acknowledge and realize, oh, there's some bigger feelings here. And sometimes just the act of writing it already dissipates the intensity of it. And sometimes we uncover other feelings that we can start to feel through. And when we recognize, oh, I just put down the word betrayed, now I'm actually feeling a whole different emotion. It allows us to process the feelings in a different way, simply by giving them a label, giving them a name. And this, by the way, is some of the work that Chris Voss, the hostage negotiator, he doesn't speak to working through sober journeys this way, but he talks about how important it is to add a label to something in order to give it a form outside of you. And so this is a very masculine practice,
Yeah.
And it works really, really well.
First of all, I had various versions of the emotion wheel on my refrigerator for a couple of years because, again, my emotional vocabulary was stunted.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't develop it. And so I could identify one of those big ones. The wheel I had like the core feelings on the inside, and then it had like a second layer of more feelings, and then it had a third layer of more feelings. And so I could sort of map out to the outside to give that label.
It's such a great tool for, especially if we haven't given ourselves that opportunity to develop that emotional intelligence.
Yeah. But the other thing was along the lines of what you said. I've never been a journaler. I've tried, I get a journal, I write in it for 2 or 3 days and then it goes to the side. But I was told and started writing do not send letters.
Love it.
And so sometimes a particular person or situation would just have me wrapped around the axle. And because I wasn't used to emotions, they were the sort of things that I wanted to drink over. But instead, I would write this letter, just all the curse words, all the nasty, all the frustration, all the pissed, everything out in this letter. And sometimes I would go burn it. And other times I would just crumple it up as hard as I could and pitch it. Other times, those letters were to a part of me that I was disappointed in. And again, I could just write without any editing, just, I'm so disappointed and I'm so ashamed and so whatever. But just getting them out of me in some manner that I didn't have to vomit on the world was so helpful.
It's so therapeutic. Another great way, other than crumpling and burning the paper, is shredding it. That feels very good to actually take those words and shred it and get rid of it completely. So I love that. And it doesn't have to be journaling. We think about journaling as these secrets that people find under the closet, in the closet years after you've passed. It can literally be a piece of paper or the back of a receipt. Just to get it out of you. The purpose is to get that emotion identified, labeled, and like you're literally pulling it out of you and not holding it within you, which is what's driving the craving and the desire for going back to drinking. Yeah.
I'm going to spring one more question on you that we didn't talk about, but I think that it's something that just came to mind, which is for those of us who know somebody going on this dry January challenge, what are some recommendations for things to both say and not say that will be supportive but not pressuring, or not future shaming, or you know what I'm saying? Like, how are some ways we can be supportive and careful?
I always advocate for a conversation. What do you need? Because each of us needs something different. Some of us need daily messages of affirmation and love. Some of us just need, I'm here, and no more than that. Some of us just need a little reminder, I'm here if you need me. Thanks, that's all I need. So always asking for permission is another very big thing, because as we're coming out of an alcohol journey, things feel very uncomfortable, kind of like fried, like your emotions feel fried, your nervous system feels fried, you feel very vulnerable. So imposing anything on anyone in that place feels scary and dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things we know about trauma survivors and recovering addicts is we treat them like someone who has been through trauma. We treat them with enormous kindness and safety and consent, asking for permission, asking for consent. And we all know how good that feels when someone says, what do you need? And then honors it, because each of us is very different. Just knowing that there's someone out there asking that question, just that very simple question, what do you need? I'm here for you. That's it. Maybe they don't want 100 mocktail recipes. Maybe they do. But we each are very, very different. And I think just giving them that support and knowing that they're there for you, that someone's there for you, goes a very long way.
And I was thinking too, like, even just saying something like, I'm proud of you, could be loaded.
Totally. Oh, 100%. Because we all have a history with language. And that might trigger for them an experience of the way their parents spoke to them, or one of the things that caused them to seek, chemical support in the first place. So once again, just always asking. And we can think about, even in the dental world, we talk about consent. We can think about that here too, because it creates safety and it creates a sense of trust. I'm not going to assume what you need. I'm going to ask you, what do you need? And then really honoring that. That's, of course, the next part of it. If someone says, nothing, I just want to be alone tonight, okay, give them that, because some people just need to be alone and be by themselves for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other piece is just to be super mindful not to should on somebody or over advise somebody. We have such good intentions. I am the most well-intentioned advice giver you ever want to meet. Yes. And my daughter told me that unsolicited advice is just premeditated criticism.
That should be on a t-shirt, Margie.
Right.
Yes. It feels that way sometimes.
It does. Yeah. And so I think that those are just things that we can be mindful of as people are just kicking the tires in their own journey, in their own way. And it might just only be meant to be a 1-month health reset. And so it's all good. It's all good.
It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. And everybody is on their own journey. And when we give people that autonomy, that creates safety as well. With that relationship that you create with other people is also a learning opportunity to create that relationship with yourself. And so just by honoring them in that way and giving them that autonomy, it gives them the gift of getting that little bit closer to that self-love that we were talking about before.
Yeah. Tarryn, as we wrap up to the end of our time together, what are some of the things that have been an outcome of your choosing not to have alcohol in your life?
Oh my gosh. Well, I could go on for another hour about that. But, I think the biggest thing is that developing that relationship with myself. When I was on my alcohol journey, I didn't know who I was. I didn't like the person who I was. And I was constantly trying to make up for that and trying to cover up for that and trying to hide that fact. And it was very painful to acknowledge that. It was very painful for me to admit that to myself, is that I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what she wanted. I didn't know what she liked. I didn't know how to love her, true to what you had said earlier. And what I've learned coming through my sober journey is to get to know me. And oh my gosh, what a gift that is. And I'm coming to tears now, because when you get to know who you are, all of you, and fully accept yourself, which I do not think is possible, was not possible for me when I was masking so much of my feelings with alcohol, then I was able to truly show up for the people I love in my life and to fully experience the beauty of this world. I had never known how beautiful the ocean was, or the two turkeys outside my window right now. I never had the opportunity to really see them and just admire them. And it was like this veil was pulled off away from my eyes when I, quite a while into my sober journey, when I finally, it's like a fresh lenses that I saw the world through, but that I also got to see myself through. And I am so, so grateful for that.
Beautiful. Well, I know that I just cannot go too long of a time without spending time with you, because I just always come away feeling just like a better version of myself. So if other people want more of Tarryn, how can they have that?
Yeah, well, I welcome you to check out thebizofhappiness.com or the Business of Happiness podcast. And thank you so much
for fantastic podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Margie. Thank you for having me here today. This really has colored my whole day. And I mean that with all sincerity. This has really been such a beautiful, beautiful part of my day. And I'm really grateful to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming and spending time with us. And for all of you who are listening, we celebrate your choices, whatever they are. We welcome you into our community. Please make sure that you go to LinkedIn, to the groups section, and find the Sober Life Rocks groups, where we can share these sort of discussions and celebrate and lift each other up for our choices. Thank you.